Hello fight fans, thanks for joining us at MMA Insider. Before we get rolling with today's news, show some love by hitting that like button and subscribing. Now let's uncover the latest happenings in MMA. Starting on, Khamzat Chimaev confirms plans for UFC 308 return in Abu Dhabi. Moving on, Kamaru Usman reveals plans for welterweight return, opens up on who could be next. Next, Dustin acknowledges 7 men as potential opponents for his next fight. Moving on, Gaethje shares regrets he has after Max Holloway loss at UFC 300. Lastly, Sean O'Malley hits back at critics of his ESPY Best MMA Fighter win. UFC middleweight contender Khamzat Chimaev wants to fight for gold in his return later this year. Khamzat has been out of action since a short-notice bout against Kamaru Usman in October. Khamzat Chimaev was originally set to fight Paulo Costa at UFC 294, but he was forced out. As a result, Kamaru Usman stepped up and was handed a majority decision defeat. The bout was labeled as a title eliminator, but post-fight, Dana White had a change of plans. Instead, Khamzat Chimaev didn't get a crack at UFC middleweight gold. He was instead given a main event opposite Robert Whittaker, set for last month in Saudi Arabia. Just over a week from fight night, Khamzat was forced out due to illness. In his place was Ikram Aliskerov, who was handed a first-round knockout loss by Robert Whittaker. Since then, Khamzat Chimaev has been quiet about his return to the cage. However, the middleweight contender has been linked to a potential fight at UFC 308 in Abu Dhabi in October. Speaking in a recent interview, the Chechen confirmed that rumors of a fall return were accurate. However, Khamzat Chimaev also made a head-turning remark in the interview as well. Speaking with Match TV, the middleweight contender made his case for a title shot. In Chimaev's eyes, his 7-fight winning streak in the octagon is more than enough to finally fight for gold. Here is what he said. Most likely I will return in October in Abu Dhabi. My opponent is unknown so far. I would like to fight for the title. I have 7 fights, 7 victories. There is no fighter in the UFC who has won 7 fights without fighting for the belt. While Khamzat Chimaev wants to fight for UFC gold, there's a bit of a logjam at 185 pounds at the moment. In the last few months, former champions Sean Strickland and Robert Whittaker have made their cases for a title shot with lopsided wins over Paulo Costa and Ikram Aliskerov. Do you think Khamzat Chimaev deserves a title shot? Former UFC welterweight champion Kamaru Usman is planning to fight at 170 pounds later this year. Kamaru Usman hasn't competed since a short-notice clash at middleweight with Khamzat Chimaev last October at UFC 294. Despite being out-grappled by Khamzat early, the former champion made a late rally. Ultimately, Chimaev emerged with a majority decision victory to remain undefeated. The defeat was Kamaru Usman's 3rd in a row, but it wasn't like he was losing to anyone. Prior to his defeat to Chimaev, the former champion had 2 straight losses to current UFC title holder Leon Edwards. Since his defeat last October, the 37-year-old hasn't been linked to any return opponent. However, Kamaru Usman is far from retired. Speaking on the Anik and Florian podcast earlier this week, the former UFC champion discussed his planned return. There, Usman admitted that he's in a very unique and strange position. He believes that he can contend in 2 different weight classes, but is leaning towards welterweight for his return. In the interview, Kamaru Usman was asked who he could see himself facing in his UFC return. Then Kamaru was asked if his next opponent would be one of 4 fighters: Shavkat Rakhmonov, Ian Gary, Jack Della Maddalena, and Bilal Muhammad. In response, Usman gave a resounding yes. Here is what he said. Yeah, like you said, it's an interesting spot. I've never been in a spot like this where it's just getting back. Just wherever I want to go, it's just getting back. For me, I made my career being a welterweight. I never thought about middleweight. Obviously, when that possibility of getting the second belt came up, yeah, I thought about it. But besides that, welterweight just seems to be the way where I have been, where I'm comfortable. But for the right fight, middleweight makes sense. I know I'm at the tail end. Let me finish the career the right way and then decide what else I want to do. So I'm just getting healthy right now. Oh yes, I'll face one of them next. Dustin Poirier is acknowledging 7 men as potential opponents for his next fight. The former interim UFC lightweight champion Dustin, at 35, is looking to fight again and has a rather lengthy list of potential opponents. Dustin last fought and was defeated by Islam Makhachev this past June at UFC 302. Poirier has 3 wins and 3 losses in his last 6 fights in the octagon. It was during a recent appearance on the Anik and Florian podcast that Dustin discussed talk of his retirement and the potential of his next fight in the octagon. After the Islam fight, when I got back home, I thought maybe this is it. And then a few weeks went by, injuries started hurting less and less post-fight, and I was like, I gotta do this again. I've never lost 2 in a row. I can't leave this sport on a loss. But at the same time, I wanna be 100% in it if I'm gonna do it again because I don't wanna disrespect the sport. It was John and Nick who presented Dustin with a list of potential opponents which included Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor, Alexander Volkanovski, Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway, Charles Oliveira, and Colby Covington, to which Dustin responded, 100%. Yeah, for sure. If I do fight again, and when I do fight again, it'll be definitely one of those guys you just said. Dustin already has a history with McGregor, Gaethje, Holloway, and Oliveira. Dustin trained with Covington and had a missed bout with Diaz. The only fighter he hasn't had contact with is former UFC featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski. Who would you like to see Dustin Poirier fight upon his return to the octagon? Share your thoughts in comments. Justin Gaethje shared a few things he wishes he would have done differently against Max Holloway in their UFC 300 BMF clash. Gaethje lost to Holloway by a last-second knockout at UFC 300 in April. The loss snapped a 2-fight winning streak as he relinquished the BMF title to Holloway. Gaethje has kept a relatively low profile after the loss to Holloway. He's attended a few UFC events but is taking a slow, methodical path back to the octagon as he recovers from the brutal knockout. In one of the few times since UFC 300, Gaethje has spoken out on his performance and opened up on what he feels he could have done differently in the cage. Here is what he said. I didn't feel exhausted in there, which I would assume would have been the repercussion of breaking your nose is not being able to use it. My game plan wasn't necessarily the correct game plan, but that's only something you can worry about after the fact. I think I would have pressured more, I would have tried to move forward, I thought he would come to me more, and when he did come, it was so unpredictable. As Gaethje prepares for his UFC return, he's continuing to be brutally honest about his most recent defeat, and will likely use it as fuel towards a future triumphant performance. UFC bantamweight champion Sean O'Malley earned an ESPY award last weekend despite many questioning his designation as the show's Best MMA Fighter. O'Malley, who is expected to face Merab Dvalishvili later this year, earned the 2024 ESPY award for Best MMA Fighter last weekend. He beat out other top UFC names such as Islam Makhachev and Alex Pereira for the award. Despite O'Malley's recent success in the octagon, some pundits and fans felt O'Malley did not deserve the prestigious award. Many felt that fighters such as Pereira and Makhachev were more deserving. O'Malley has issued his first public remarks since winning the award and has a pointed message for his critics. Here's what he said. You're looking at a ESPY winner over here, fellas. The Aljamain Sterling fight, I was a massive underdog. He was the greatest bantamweight of all time. Everyone thought I was gonna get smoked. So if it was for that performance, I can see. The Chito Vera performance was a masterpiece. I was a crazy underdog. Thank you so much for tuning into today's video. Your dedication and support fuel our passion to bring you the latest and greatest in the MMA world. If you enjoyed today's news, please give us a thumbs up and share it with fellow MMA fans. Remember to subscribe to stay in the loop with daily MMA updates. We've got a lot of exciting news, interviews, and analysis coming your way every single day. Your engagement helps us grow and serve the MMA community even better. Once again, thank you for being an integral part of our daily MMA journey.